Hey, it's simple, you're watching Thorin channel. Shut the fuck up, you fucking bitch.
The new Navi, the lineup which had Guardian join, was supposed to be a team that could win championships, a team that could be among the very best in the world, a team that hopefully had the potential to move past the limitations of the lineup that Zeus had, which at times was second or third best in the world, could beat the best teams, won the odd tournament, but wasn't going to win the major, wasn't going to be the number one ranked team in the world. This was supposed to be the squad that, with the potential and the raw talent and the skills they have now with some of the star players, could do it now, never mind waiting. And Zeus was viewed as a limitation to some degree, rightly justifiable at the time. So you look at the conditions that they had in this squad. Zeus was leaving, so you put aside the limitations he had, hope he can replace or get different strengths. Guardian was coming in to join a player who pretty much had almost never been bad in his career, obviously wants to finish out his career winning, wants that last chance to win a major, he's willing to come along for the ride. You'd hope that would be a good factor. The fragging power should be crazy in a lineup with Guardian in it. Blade was taking over the reins fully, one of the great in-game leaders, arguably. I mean, you could make a case for him if you want to go crazy. Greatest leader to ever come out of the CIS region. He doesn't have the majors and the championships, but just his tenure, the number of different versions of Counter-Strike he's played in, all the players he's brought up under him. You add in that this is an era where lots of different top teams are winning events. Evil Geniuses, Astralis, Fnatic, Vitality, Mouse Sports. I mean, basically everyone who's an elite level team in the last 3 months, as long as their name isn't Team Liquid, they win tournaments. So this should be Navi's chance. Their talent says that they should be right in amongst that pack. But you look at what they've actually been able to do, and they've basically played at 6 LANs. I'm counting the ESL offline group stage phase before the Season 10 finals as a separate LAN, because it doesn't really make sense to count it as the same LAN entirely. We've got way more maps for a start than some of them. So their first one they went to right after the player change was DreamHack Masters Malmo. They had a big result there, one of their best. They made top 4. They lost to Vitality, who ended up finishing second. Okay, so you could say maybe they were the 3rd best team, 4th best team at Strasbourg. I'd say they're the 4th best team at that tournament. That's reasonable. Then they went to Star Series Season 8, the one that was in Turkey. Star Series tournament they've always done well at. Little detail about that. They tended to do well at that tournament when it was in Kiev. This one was in Turkey, and you know what? They didn't do shit. They finished 13th to 16th. That is appalling. Then they went, and by the way, that was a double elimination tournament with best of 3. Then they went to Blast Copenhagen. Right, you know what my feelings are about the smaller blasts, just the best of ones. Who gives a fuck? Unless you basically make the final, and probably unless you win it, it means very little to me. They finished 3rd. Okay, great. You won some best of ones. Don't really give a shit. Then they went to the ESL Season 10 group stage phase offline, the Europe section. They qualified. Okay, great. There we go. They're winning the series they need to. Not against all the best teams. Then they go to EPL Season 10 finals. They have one of their best results again. Top 4. Lose to Fnatic, who ends up coming second in the tournament. Astralis also was on the inside of the bracket, so probably reasonably about the 4th best team in the tournament. Again, I can't give them the nod over Astralis. Never beaten anyone of that quality. Then they go to Epicenter. Last tournament of the year. This time it's on home soil. Remember, the team is now majority Russian in terms of the players. This should be a great return for. This should be a chance to win the tournament, right? The only other top teams in the tournament are Vitality, haven't won a big event since their player changed at the time. You had Mouse Spots, yeah, they're on a heater, but they've just literally come super jet lagged over from CS Summit. And you have Evil Geniuses, everyone's saying they're burned out from all this travel, haven't had a win in ages. That's about it. They're the teams that are your competition, and you don't even make top 4. Never mind make the final. Never mind come close to winning it. You finish 5th to 6th. What an underwhelming squad this has proven to be. So let's jump into some of these details. Since the start of DreamHack Masters Malmo until now, they have on LAN played 44 maps. They've won 26 of them. They've tied 2 and they've lost 16. Now, I just throw ties out because they mean fuck all in Counter-Strike. So in terms of a win rate on maps, 61.90% is the win rate. Okay. In itself's underwhelming, right? When you go and look at some of the teams they've played a lot of teams that weren't top 10 teams. You'd hope that was like 75%, 80% win rate on terms of maps. And now what I would have to do is say, yeah, but in the context of who they played, they're not quite as good as that map rate seems. That map win rate isn't even that good when you consider who they've played. Then you look in series play, who they've played against. So in series, they've played 15 times. They've won 9 of them. Hey, that doesn't sound bad, right? 9 out of 50. Yeah, except here are the wins and here are the losses, and let's put them in context. They've beaten Optic, MSL's Optic. They've beaten NiP, They've beaten Hellraisers, they've beaten Wendigo, they've beaten G2, they've beaten MIBR, they've beaten Evil Geniuses, they've beaten Heroic, and they've beaten Heroic again. Now, let's just run through those a second. Optic with MSL, they aren't even supposed to be a top 10 team. They were doing miracles to even be competitive. Obviously, they're supposed to smash a team like that. NIP. Okay, NIP's got the skills to go against them. NIP's like briefly getting into the top 10 and then dropping back out. Doesn't really have a proper IGL situation. Still finding out what's going to go on with Forest. Coaching situation just changed. They're an alright team. They actually probably punch a little bit above their weight, but they're not that good. Okay, nothing big there. You're definitely supposed to beat a team like NIP if you want to be a champion. Hellraisers lost Woxic ever since. Who gives a fuck? Like, they can do what they want in that team. It's a very underwhelming team. You're meant to beat those easily. Wendigo, again, not only is Wendigo a team you're supposed to beat, but they're not even the Wendigo of early 2019 who at least had some potential and some players that could go somewhere. No one gives a fuck about Wendigo now. G2, are you out of your fucking mind? G2's a more underwhelming team than Navi, but with more excuses. Like, they actually have reasons to be underwhelming, factors that make it not as bad. Some compelling arguments against it. Navi's supposed to be beating teams like that all day long. Then you look, MIBR, we're talking about MIBR with fucking Lucas. Like, what have they done? Who are they? No one reasonable, no one meaningful. Like, that team doesn't matter. They're certainly not a top 10 team. Evil Geniuses, there we go. There's a legit win. Now, to be fair, yes, Evil Geniuses obviously had very up and down form and lost to a lot of teams in the last few months that you wouldn't have thought they would, bearing in mind in my ranking, the number 2 ranked in the world. They won a couple of championships, made a bunch of top 4s. But okay, they can certainly lose, and definitely in a brawl of fragging. Yeah, that can happen sometimes. And then you beat Heroic twice. Now listen, Heroic, I'm putting in that Optic category. Yeah, they've got some decent tactics, some solid players. They're not supposed to be top 10. They're actually punching above their weight in certain regards, like making top 4 at Epicenter, for example, plus the head of Navi, by the way. Where are the impressive wins in there? There's not a single impressive win except the one against EG. And even then, EG's been handing out fucking free wins to some of the lesser teams, like fucking Pez. Don't know why Pez is something. I guess you one for you, one for you, one for you. And also, you know, Stanislav's massive head like that fucking Pez dispenser. Whatever. You get where I was going with that. So then you look at the losses. They've lost, obviously, 6 series. They lost to Vitality. They lost to G2. They lost to Heroic. They lost to Fnatic. They lost to Vitality again. They lost to EG. Let's just run through those a second, shall we? You lost to Vitality. Okay, fair enough. That was when Vitality was looking good. Vitality hasn't had many good placings, and at the end of the year, they looked really good as well. Yeah, fair enough. We can take that. You lost them later when they were pretty good at Epicenter. You lost to the Vitality squad that at least their 2 big runs. That's not terrible. You lost to G2. That's not acceptable, I'm afraid, when you're on the level of Navi. Like, G2's not a team good enough to beat a team like Navi in a best of 3, but they did. You have to take that. They lost to Heroic. Excuse me? I mean, I guess it's not impossible. And certainly the map pool's not terrible for Heroic, but how the fuck are you losing a Heroic with the fragging power of Navi on LAN? What the... And then you lost to Fnatic. That's absolutely fine. Fnatic's a better team than Navi right now in all respects. Better map pool, better overall performance of players, better stylistic approach, way more depth in terms of being able to switch things up. I'd even say role balance is better in that squad. That's fine. That's not. I mean, sure, you'd like it if they beat them, but that's fine. You lost to EG. Now, that's not terrible. They're a better squad than you are. Overall, fragging-wise, probably similar, but they've got a better IGL. He can call on the fly. Map pool's not crazily dissimilar. In fact, you both want to play in Dust 2 and Inferno a lot. That's actually okay. That's not terrible. So here's the problem. When I said they won 9 out of 15 series, that sounds all right. But when you consider, in terms of like championship-level teams, their peer group, if you want Navi to be the team you imagine they could be with this roster, their peer group is they played EG twice, they played Vitality twice. They played Fnatic once. So they played 5 series against teams that actually matter if you want to be a top team, a championship quality team. They won 1 of those series. They lost the other 4. They lost twice to Vitality, lost once to Fnatic, lost once to EG. That's underwhelming already. Like, where's the potential here? What am I supposed to get excited about? That you're just dusting off teams like Heroic, but even then giving up a loss to them sometimes. Oh my god, if you put Wendigo and Hellraisers against them, fuck, they're going to do... Who gives a shit? Like, you go win a DreamHack Open if that's what you think's reasonable. That's nothing into if you want to be a World Championship level squad. Like, Team Liquid hasn't won a tournament in months and months and months. You think if I put Team Liquid against those squads, they're going to lose most of those series? No. They're probably going to win even more of these series of Navis that they've played against. Then you go look at the map pool. It's deceptive, actually. First of all, it's not crazy anyway, but they have 3 maps that they have a really good win rate on. And so let's look at it. They've got Dust 2. They're 8-3 over that time period. Problem is, that's one where they actually deserve extra credit but don't get it. So because the old Navi was so bad on Dust 2 under Zeus, pretty much their entire tenure, people don't actually notice that Navi in theory is one of the better Dust 2 teams in terms of win rate, in terms of who they've been able to beat. But actually stylistically, you look at them on the map, they still have a very fragile CT side. They have difficulty switching things up. But what happens is they take their fragging power, which is good, and they're able to use it as a hammer and smash the opponent. And it doesn't matter that they do simple things over and over again. Obviously, no pun intended there. And it works. Like, it's hard to stop that on Dust 2. It's not a map where there's a million great counters you can come up with unless you're on the level of Astralis. So that 8-3 is actually very legit when you consider who were the 3 losses against. They lost to Vitality, G2, and Evil Geniuses. And by the way, they've beaten Evil Geniuses, Vitality, and EG. Let me think. Yes, they've beaten all those teams as well on Dust 2. Now, that's fine. First of all, Dust 2 is a very variable map. And then, these are some of the teams that either are the best on Dust 2 or like Dust 2. Like, Vitality's always like Dust 2. Obviously, it's a great map for Ziwu, who's a fantastic individual player. G2, it's bizarrely one of the few things keeping that team vaguely afloat, is that even if they're terrible at some tournaments, they can still have a miracle game on Dust 2 against anyone. Then, Evil Geniuses are pretty much built, I wouldn't say a dynasty because they only won 2 championships, but they've built this period of being one of the absolute elite teams in the world on Dust 2. That was one of their go-to maps, so that's totally fine. You look at who they've beaten. They've beaten Team Liquid, they've beaten eGenius, they've beaten Vitality, they've beaten that's very legit, actually. They're very good on Dust 2. So there's one map we can give them. But then you go to Inferno, they're 6-1 over this period on LAN. Now, the problem with that is they've beaten Fnatic out of the good teams and they've lost to Vitality. Right, my issue there is the 6-1's really not that good when you consider. Let's think of other teams that are good or have been good recently on Dust 2. Astralis, Team Liquid, you haven't played any of them. You haven't played any of them, you haven't beaten any of them. I'm talking about Inferno here, sorry. You haven't played any of those teams, it doesn't matter. So as a result, that Inferno is actually pretty overrated. It's a little bit padded. Then we go to Overpass, they're 5-2. Losses, Vitality, Fnatic. Okay, Fnatic 1's not bad. Fnatic have pretty much always played that map with this core. Vitality 1, again, not terrible. They've somewhat liked the map. I don't think they necessarily fit it as much now. Then you go to Nuke, right? This is an example of a map that's not as bad as it seems because they're 5-6. They've got a losing record on Nuke, but they've lost to G2, Heroic, FaZe, Fnatic, Vitality, Heroic, and they actually tied Astralis when they played them. So actually, when you consider tying Astralis, okay, yes, Blast since it's a tie, but that's pretty legit. Then you consider some of those teams you're losing to. Heroic, it's one of the maps that they always go into. It's a map that they're picking all the time. Vitality, certainly not terrible on Nuke. FaZe, okay, not really a classic FaZe map. So, but then again, FaZe has fragging power. It's actually not as bad. You've lost to some solid Nuke teams there. That's not a terrible one. On Train, which they don't really play much, they won 2 and lost 1. They only lost to Heroic. Losing to Heroic's not very good there, quite frankly. You'd think that's a map that would be very good for Navi. Certainly was under Zeus. Mirage is bizarre because they've lost all 3 they've played. They lost to G2 and they lost twice to EG. The problem is, I think EG, even though it's not a map they've picked into much except for Epicenter, I actually think that's a map that EG can flex into a lot more because it really suits Stan's mid-round calling. I think that and Dust 2 makes more sense than Dust 2 and Inferno for EG if you ask me. So I don't necessarily look down on that. I even think Mirage is maybe an area they can explore in this team as a potential 3rd or 4th map to go to. So let's go and look at the roster of this team that's underwhelmed. Right, obviously you start with the big name. The GOAT in terms of individual players in CSGO history is simple. Now the funny thing is, there's this perception that he's slumping over the last few months in CSGO. Let me just show you this graphic a second, shall we, boys and girls? So there we go. You can see there, in the top left, I've picked the LAN filter. I've picked the time span that covers from DreamHack Malmo until now on LAN. Every type of opponent, every type of map. And here's the team in Navi. So the perception is that Simple is in a little slump right now. Ziwu's way better than him. And, you know, he's fallen off his game a bit. People are questioning, like, can he even be a contender for best player in the world? Are you looking at how much this motherfucker is having to carry Navi? Look at his numbers. Compare his kill to death with all the other players on his team. Compare his rating with all the other players on his team. Compare the differential of kill to death with all the other players on his team. And this is over 44 maps, pretty decent sample size. He is still posting monster numbers. It's just that he isn't at the beginning of 2019 and peak 2018 form, which was the best anyone has ever played in Counter-Strike. By the way, better than Ziwu. I'll go back for early 2019. I'll go back for 20. Better than Ziwu. Ziwu's an extremely good player, but you're talking about the GOAT right now. So this shows what a monster Simple is. Plus 258 differential. Look at that fucking kill to death ratio. That's unbelievable. So then you go down. Let's keep this graphic up. Let's look at electronic. Okay, you could say he's dropped off a little bit, like the plus minus isn't as crazy, but I'd say in this team, he has to play more of an entry role sometimes. I think that's just logical. Obviously, he's doing really well in terms of the other stats. That's fine. They're both really good players. It's just I want to point out they're not the 1A and 1B that people try to make out like they are. They could be at times earlier in 2019, but they aren't right now at the end of 2019. Coming in now to, obviously, we're in early 2020. Flamey, he's doing decently enough. His differential is not that great, but obviously the rest of the stats are pretty decent. That's fine. That's kind of what you want from Flamey. These three so far are doing their jobs. Those three right now, you could have a championship team with numbers like these. I mean, Simple's obviously more than even some of the great players that are in championship teams right now. You go down to Boomich, when you consider he's the IGL, and you consider how they use him in the team, I think that's terrible, actually. For an IGL, I think he's fragging fine. I mean, all those numbers are okay, especially in the context of the rest of the team. I've already done a whole video about it. Guardian's fucking dog shit right now. So yeah, he's god awful. He's minus 64 for those maps. Pretty terrible in all the stats. So yeah, as a team, you can see where the obvious holes are. One of the problems with Navi is they're not actually fragging as crazy as people think they are in context. Like, they are very much carried by Simple and Electronic, and then Flamey does his job, Boomich does his job relative to their roles in proportion to who's on their team and what type of team they are. Quite frankly, in terms of actual raw fragging, forgetting HLTV ratings, Simple has to mega carry in terms of raw fragging to actually get them even to where they are, like 61% win rate over maps, only winning 1 out of 5 series against elite teams. He is averaging almost plus 6 differential per map over 44 maps. If you're wondering where Electronics is, his is half that. He's like plus 3. And Electronics still one of the better players in the world. Then you look at the fact that Simple and Electronic have to get the opening kills generally, which they're very good at, and Boomich to some degree does his job when he's in those kinds of scenarios as well. Okay, you're relying on a lot. You're getting a lot out of certain players, and yet the team's not getting the results. There's the problem. And so as a result, Navi has maps where they have monster fragging performances on some maps, then they have some maps that got completely shut down, and they look like clowns. They still do stupid shit in this team that I can't handle. That's a holdover from the Zeus era. Like not always giving the gun to Simple and Electronic. It will never make sense to me. I'll never fuck with it as an angle. Now, another factor that's a problem in this team is they've definitely become deficient in terms of tactics since Zeus left. They are tactically very brittle right now. They look good right up until they don't look good, and then they have no plan B and the game's over. There's no adaptation. They're not going to come back in a match off doing some tactical read or switching up what they're doing. They're going to do what they're going to do, and it's going to work or it's going to fail. So as a result, it's no surprise to me that EG's been able to beat them a bunch of times. EG has an IGL who is famous for his on-the-fly calling and adapting mid-round. So as a result, it's going to be really tough for you if you've just come in prepped well and you hope that your first plan's going to work, and go watch the games between them. They get the early leads, and then EG just comes back and beats them. And it's like, haha, take a lie, take a number, join the line, like you don't know how to adapt. It's one of the reasons why, in my opinion, they lost twice on Mirage, not taking a snap. It's just Stanislaw mid-rounding the game and just reading these motherfuckers. Once he keyed into what they were doing, he hacked the fucking Gibson, didn't he? Now, one of the problems I have here is that, remember, Blade's influence is supposed to be significant on this team. He's made some great tactical squads over the history. The problem is, he was the IGL of them. So my problem is, I've got to say, Boomich is okay as an IGL in terms of like he's all right at calling, seems to implement what Blade wants, and then he frags decently. But I don't think he's a good IGL when it talks about playing championship level teams that have themselves usually the best IGLs. And I think in that regard, he's actually been quite underwhelming himself. I don't think I've seen much development from him entirely. It doesn't surprise me that they have so much strength on DOS 2, and then all the rest of the maps, you can definitely start to pick and choose and say, I don't really think that's that good, or they've got some flaws here. Look, they haven't beat anyone good. So you know what? Say what you like about Zeus. One thing I never said about this guy is that he was in any way a bad in-game leader. Even even at the very end, just as an in-game leader, he was probably still top 5, top 6 in the world. So my thing is, listen, Zeus wasn't a mid-round god, but he could condition his opponents, he could grind out rounds, he had a playbook, he had variety, and when he didn't have any of those things working, or it was a moment where it might not work to just try and execute, he's only been grinding out rounds anyway, they aren't all working, he knew when to gamble, he knew when to do like a 4 stack somewhere. Boomich doesn't know any of that shit. Blade doesn't implement any of that. So where now if you're Navi? Like, first of all, you can't keep wasting Simple's prime. Like, this guy's so incredible and such a game breaker. Maybe he can just play 5, 10 years at this level. He's probably the only person I'd say has the possibility to do it. My issue is, you can't bank on that. You've got to, while he now is in form, as he has been for the last couple of years, to win every possible type of tournament, you've got to make use of that. That's a window you've got to seize upon now. You can't wait for other players to develop. Ditto for Electronic, especially in his current role where a lot can be asked from him on T-side. He's still one of the best players in the world. And crucially, if you have a Simple as he with one of those level of players, he's a fantastic second star, sidekick star. And that's right there. There's your star component covered already. So this is a great time to strike, not just in terms of the players and their form, but look at how much play there is at the top end of the scene, how the brackets almost entirely dictate who's going to win the tournament or who's going to get a chance to upset Astralis, as it tends to be. So now, one of the problems with this team is we need more depth tactically. It doesn't have to be loads, but I think if they ever get it, it would show up on a map like Mirage, where some of their players, Electronic and Simple, have been god tier over their careers. Guardian, even though he's fucking god awful now. I think if they ever get any tactical depth, you'll see that map at least go into the middle of their map pool in terms of strength. Obviously, you've got to kick Guardian immediately. And if you do, what player should you bring in? There's 2 obvious ways you go with this. You either bring in a strong entry player, or you bring in a strong IGL. If you want to bring in a strong entry player, or just a better entry player, or another good entry player, obvious one is Kicker from now Virtus Pro, former Vanguard. Statistically not that great, but he'd do his job in the squad. I think it would free up Electronic a bit more to be around late round and win the clutches more, not have to be such an entry, or they could make a deadly entry duo, and them and Simple could be a pretty crazy pack to go in. There's one angle you can go. It doesn't even have to be a good IGL, just a better IGL. Like, an obvious person to me, and in fact someone who could fill both roles, is Jerry from Force. Like, when I watched them play at Epicenter, this guy was doing his job and seemed like tactically he had an idea of what he was doing and how to work an opponent and where to go himself when he was the guy, and had a decent enough fragging as entry IGL. So there's an obvious one you could go ahead and pick up. Add him to this squad, kick out Guardian, make Boomich just a supportive element. I think that alone could make you a championship squad, because the pieces are there to be a championship squad, to even maybe be number 1 in the world when you've got to consider Simple Electronics form. Just right now, stylistically, you're nowhere close. Tactically, there isn't the depth. The map pool's not deep and not wide enough. You're looking quite underwhelming once people put the context in on your wins and your performances, and you haven't made a single final. How fucking underwhelming. This video was kindly supported by Alexander Rao, Blunt Smoking Anus Destroyer, Dane Cuskley, Dean Tanglis, Chi Mao, JDubs, NateDOhDoubleG, Peter the Feeder, Tobias Bernasconi, and a special thanks goes out to Jerky's Minion and Mohammed, Alabdul, Razzaq. Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Maybe you'd like to ask me a question in my monthly Patreon AMA. Would you like teasers on upcoming content that I'm doing? Maybe you want to take part in a discussion directly with me? Well, if so, then put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today at the Patreon link in the description below.